theologians. Today we are talking about a very important doctrine in Christianity. It's called the Doctrine of Salvation. Now, this week we will have many interesting conversations about salvation. And today is just an introduction. But I want you to be thinking about some of the questions that you have. I have passed around a box for you to place your questions in, and we're going to keep this box in place all year so that we can be sure that we're answering all these theological questions that we have. And so it is your chance in class to actually ask those questions that you just don't know about. And so we want to, in this unit, we want to discuss issues like the nature of humanity, the nature of evil. Why is it we need salvation? What is salvation? So let's go ahead and get started. And as you notice, I also passed out a sheet that you can view as I go through this PowerPoint called the different views of salvation. So the first question is, what is salvation? Well, you have to be aware that the way you define a problem determines the direction in which you pursue a solution. So how you understand, whatever your understanding of mankind's fundamental problem will determine their prescribed solution, right? So if some of you are on cheer teams and football teams and all these teams that you might have an injury. If you were to go to the doctor and the doctor said, you know what, you have broken your shoulder, when in reality you have broken your rib. So if that were the case, then they would prescribe a solution to the injury by applying the cure in the wrong place. And so that's what we want to understand with the human condition. What is our problem? As the human race, what is our fundamental problem? Well, we have various theological views on what is actually mankind's problem. So let's quickly kind of give these some attention and help us to understand what direction we're going in our discussion today. So the first one, and it's on your sheet here, is liberation theology. Well, in this framework, we understand our central problem is oppression. And now, of course, this has been in the news in the last number of years, and we talk a lot about oppression of a group of people by a group of people. And a lot of times this brings up some real issues and tensions among races of people and groups of people. For example, we have a tension between the rich and the poor. We have tension between ethnic groups. We have tension with political systems and people. So these are the groups that talk about the main fundamental problem of the human condition is that different people are oppressed. And they're oppressed by political systems. They're oppressed by powerful groups. And so the solution to this problem would be a deliverance of some sort. And that deliverance comes through either a political deliverance or salvation or a revolutionary means. Revolution might mean something like a political coup, which we just witnessed with Russia just a few days ago, this coup attempt that was squelched. And that is taking over the political fabric of a nation, and that would solve the issue. So this is a political salvation. One of the a good picture of a political system trying to deliver people from oppression would certainly be in the late 19th century, early 20th century Marxism. This is what Marxism would say, is these classes Are, the answer to the oppression of people is to instill a even system where everybody gets the same. So anyway, we see liberation theology really purports that, and so we'll get more into it in our discussions later on in just a few minutes. A second one is existential theology, and this is mankind's central problem is just himself. That is, he is not fulfilling his authentic true self. Well, we see this a lot of times. I mean, a lot of you, I'm sure, have heard the motto, I must seek to be my own best version of myself. Be the best version of yourself. So if yourself, if each individual, if they're the ones that are the significant fundamental problem of humanity, then the solution and the salvation comes by obtaining an authentic existence, leading to its true self and true identity. So have you ever thought about, as you listen to some of the philosophers and some of your, maybe some of your podcast, and they talk about being an authentic you. And if you become the authentic you, then your world would be a better place. And not only your world would be a better place, but the world would be a better place. So becoming the best version of yourself would be your salvation. So that's existential theology. Well, secular theology would say, well, the problem is mankind's reliance on God and religion. I mean, isn't God and religion the source of all of the tensions that we have and the problems that we have with each other in the world? Well, if that's the case, then the solution would be abandoning that religion, any religion, and the need for God, as well as the need for God, and becoming self-sufficient and fully human. So notice that in this framework, there's no really conversation about the reality of God. There's no conversation about our lived experience with guilt and condemnation and sin and the things that we do to each other. And so it has this look as if we can solve our own problems by just extinguishing the central issue of God and the central issue of choosing a religion. Well, of course, in the Christian orthodoxy stream, we have evangelical theology. And so in evangelical theology, the problem then is, a central problem is the broken relationship with God through sin and man's subsequent corrupted nature. And so if this is true, then the solution is to be justified and cleansed and restored to a right standing with God by the work of the redemption that we have through Jesus Christ. And so this is, of course, a Christian worldview and a Christian way to explain what is man's condition. And notice that this evangelical framework really touches in on our lived experience. We do have guilt before God. We experience that. I don't care if you're a teenager, young adult, senior citizen, living in any part of the world. We have to deal with the sense of guilt that we feel in our lived experience. And also this evangelical theology gives voice. This position, the central problem, gives voice to the reality that we're bringing God into the equation. He's already a part of that equation, and that we have to situate or orient ourselves right before God as we solve the only means in solving that problem. So the human condition, this is what we really want to investigate, is liberation theology asserts our problem is external and ignores the internal origins of selfishness, self-absorption, and even inter-evil motivations. God is not considered in this framework at all in the others. Mankind's lived experience with inner guilt and spiritual reality is ignored. The human condition of mankind's personal misery and sense of lostness is ignored. And these are the kind of realities that mankind in in the recording of history have dealt with, the tensions that we have dealt with in ourselves, our inner persons, our inner emotions, our inner conflict, and how that conflict extends to our relationships with other people, but more importantly, our relationship with God. And this is of extreme importance when we're talking about the nature of salvation. It is essential of importance when we're talking about that. So, existential theology is correct in asserting that we do imprison ourselves with our lust for things and power and pleasure and significance, but it fails to realize these are second level issues which stem from the first level issue, which is our problem in our alienation from God. Have you ever had a sense, I feel separated from God, I'm distant from God, I don't feel close to God? So the true self is as alienated from God as the lived life. So our fundamental problem is our orientation toward God. So we really, when we want to talk about the human condition, we want to consider Genesis 3. And if you want to take a look there, what you see is Eve's temptation by the serpent. And notice that when this temptation unfolds, what's actually unfolding is this rejection of God's counsel and rejection of God's determined reality. So we see that the first question that the serpent asked the woman is, did God really say? Did God really say? So that throws doubt in the woman's mind, and certainly eventually in Adam's mind, that God is telling the truth or telling the whole story. In other words, the serpent is contorting and distorting the reality that God had communicated to Adam and Eve, in which God had said, if you taste this, you go and do that, then that is going to result in death. So this doubt really developed into a suspicion of God, that God was holding out on what was really important for them to know. And so in that result, they rejected the counsel of God and they favored this counsel of the serpent. And notice that the counsel of the serpent allowed them to do what they wanted to do. Because Eve said, yes, the fruit looked like it was good for food and it would provide knowledge. What could be wrong with it? So this is called the Great Fall, when they rejected God's way and God's reality. And when they did that, this is called the fall, the human fallenness. Our nature became corrupted. Our orientation toward God became corrupted. And so because from that point on, humanity we were all infected with original sin. So salvation is the answer to that problem. And salvation then is a deliverance from a judicial verdict of condemnation for our sins. It is a pardon that was implemented as a result of Jesus' work on the cross. So this week we will discuss many of the things regarding salvation and what does it actually mean? How did Jesus actually pay for our salvation? Why did Jesus, the innocent one, isn't it wrong for him to incur our debt? And so we're going to have all of these questions on the table. And really, a lot of people feel a little bit trepidation in asking these kinds of questions. But what people often don't realize is that the Bible is sturdy. It has the ability to answer these questions because these questions are questions that have always been asked throughout Christianity. Through the 2,000 years of Christianity, we have had great thinkers that have had these kind of conversations with their culture, with their critics, and even within their own churches. And so we can ask these questions, and we can we can engage in these discussions in ways that would honor God and help us to have an understanding of our faith and to even embolden us to be able to share that faith with others. So I encourage you to ask questions, and we have a lot of things planned here this week that will help you to not only grow spiritually, but to help you to understand doctrines that have a direct impact on you. This doctrine has a direct impact on you. It has a direct impact on how you deal with guilt. It has a direct impact in your understanding of God. It has a direct impact in how you conceive of the world. And it certainly has a direct impact in how you conceive of the human condition and the human problem. So I welcome all your questions, and I look forward to all of our discussions. And I think it's going to be a very robust, very interesting week as we dive into this doctrine. So let's go ahead and get in our groups, and we will start from there.